The miracle doctor won't be a kept man. My heart belongs ashore. Chapter 1071. Stop setting off fireworks. Get out of here immediately. Arrest them and punish them severely. They must be killed. The angry voices of the Sunland people rose and fell like a symphony accompanying the fireworks. However, Park Sung-nam showed no fear, continuing to order his men to set off fireworks, even fighting with the Sunland people who rushed at them. At this moment, Park Sung-nam was extremely excited and elated, especially considering the entire process just now. He had believed Kiran York was doomed and even felt despair. However, Kiran did not disappoint them and created another miracle. Kiran stood there without moving, but Park Sung-nam could sense that Kiran was growing stronger, constantly recovering. Most importantly, he felt an immense power in Kiran, a power of justice. The scene was chaotic, on the verge of a violent clash. Just then, the lights surrounding Kiran spread out like brilliant starlight, flying in all directions. As the white lights dispersed, the fighting crowd seemed to calm down and quiet down. Everyone's gaze turned to Kiran, standing in the middle of the square. The white light slowly faded away, and the red light on his body gradually merged with him. As the last of the white light vanished and the red light fully integrated, Kiran opened his eyes. His gaze remained calm, his expression remained serene. Kiran exuded a kingly aura. More importantly, he emitted a strong sense of harmony, a stark contrast to the previous chaos and cruelty of Kanpei Ichiro. This aura was full of justice and love. Even through the internet, many viewers could feel this unique presence. Despite the distance, many people sensed the inclusiveness of Kiran's spirit. "Do you still want to continue the duel?" Kiran asked the crowd slowly. At that moment, he seemed like a god overlooking the world. The previously angry and violent Sunland people fell silent upon hearing Kiran's words. Many even showed fear in their eyes. No one could look down on Kiran anymore. In their eyes, Kiran had truly become a deity. Previously, the Sunland Ninja Association's group attack had failed. Now their top fighter, Kanpei Ichiro, had also failed. They had resorted to despicable methods twice in a row. This time they even attempted to blow up Kiran, showing no regard for their own dignity. Now, faced with Kiran's challenge, no one dared to respond. "The stones of the Pagoda of Nations belonging to other countries should be returned to them," Kiran said calmly but with authority. The spirit of the Sunland people dissipated completely, leaving them silent. "Return the stones to each country," Park Sung-nam shouted, raising his hand. "Return the stones to each country," his men echoed. "Return the stones to each country." The viewers of the live broadcast also joined in, their voices filling the internet. At that moment, the phrase, "return the stones to each country," was everywhere online, resounding across the web. Many embassies began driving to the scene to retrieve the stones representing their countries. Previously, Sunland had refused to return them. Now, with the tower destroyed, they had no reason to refuse. The Sunland people were stunned. They had never imagined that the Pagoda of Nations, which they had never wanted to dismantle, would be destroyed by Kanpei Ichiro. The tower's collapse was like a domino effect, shattering all their pride and dignity. Kanpei Ichiro, dead and fragmented, did not know his actions had made him a sinner of Sunland, while others celebrated. The fireworks exploded joyfully, celebrating his downfall. Kiran did not stay there any longer. For him, this trip to the Pagoda of Nations was undertaken with a resolve to die. As a Dragonsland man, he could die, but he would die defending Dragonsland's dignity. He had not expected the stones of the Pagoda of Nations to empower him at the crucial moment, saving his life and filling him with the power of justice. Kiran silently vowed to become a guardian of this justice, letting its light shine forever. However, Kiran's immediate concern was Yvonne Quinn's condition. He had placed Lady Meiji's lifeblood into her, and when he left, she was on the brink of death, sustained only by his internal energy. Now, with the power from the Pagoda of Nations, he believed he might be able to save her. Upon returning to the Nagoya hotel, Kiran found it unusually quiet. Those who had previously harassed him had fled, scared off by his divine status and failed tricks. Seeing Kiran return, the hotel receptionist stood up trembling, unsure of how to address him. Kiran ignored her and headed to the elevator. Unable to withstand the pressure, the receptionist fell to her knees, her submission sincere, a true worship of a powerful being. Kiran pushed the door to his room open and saw Jenny Leo using her body to keep Yvonne warm. Jenny was pale, her hair frosted, barely holding on. Kiran felt a deep surge of gratitude and heartache. He quickly approached Jenny, who, upon seeing Kiran, finally relaxed and fainted. Kiran, ensuring Yvonne's condition was stable, was filled with admiration for Jenny's selflessness. He carried Jenny to the living room, transferring his internal energy to her. Jenny, who had been on the verge of freezing, instantly felt warmth and began to recover. As she opened her eyes, she grabbed Kiran's hand and burst into tears, crying out her relief and emotions. Chapter 1072. Kiran York gently held Jenny Leo in his arms. He did not offer any words of greeting or express concern. Instead, he showered her with endless love and sincere admiration. Jenny's selflessness shone through. In truth, Yvonne Quinn's condition had worsened during Kiran's absence. Seeing Yvonne on the brink of death, Jenny couldn't bear it and used her own dragon vein power to nourish Yvonne and restore her vitality. However, her power was limited, and her small, mischievous spirit refused to help, leaving her nearly depleted. Despite this, Jenny showed no fear or regret and was determined to save Yvonne. She didn't know about Kiran's life and death struggle at the Pagoda of Nations, but shared an unspoken bond with him, weathering storms together. "Rest for a while, my body has recovered. I'll try to save Yvonne," Kiran reassured Jenny, gently patting her shoulder. Jenny calmed down, tears in her eyes, and nodded. "Please hurry, Kiran. She seems like she can't hold on much longer." "Don't worry, I will do my best to save her," Kiran replied, kissing Jenny's forehead before turning towards the bedroom. Yvonne lay on the bed, her hair completely white, motionless like a corpse. Kiran felt a deep pain and worry. He didn't know the extent of the damage caused by Lady Meiji's lifeblood, but knew Yvonne was in critical condition. He placed his hand on Yvonne's pulse, finding it cold and non-existent. Her condition had never been this severe. Filled with anxiety, Kiran transferred some of his power into Yvonne, noticing a slight change that quickly faded. He hesitated to continue, fearing it might only provide temporary relief and ultimately lead to both their deaths. Kiran wanted Yvonne to live, even if it meant sacrificing himself, but feared they might both perish. Kiran decided to thoroughly examine Yvonne's body instead of recklessly using his power. "If you don't want Yvonne to die, you must stay with her," Lady Meiji's voice suddenly sounded in Kiran's ear. Kiran became highly alert, knowing Lady Miles' spiritual attacks were formidable. Despite the collapse of the Pagoda of Nations, he couldn't afford to be complacent. Sensing Kiran's change, Lady Meiji coldly said, "Rest assured, I don't wish to die now. Without the lifeblood, I can't sustain myself." Lady Meiji's candidness surprised Kiran, but he quickly recovered, responding coldly, "Why should I trust you? It doesn't matter if you believe me. What's important is that from now on you can't die either." Lady Meiji's tone became firmer. Kiran felt slightly feverish but understood, retorting, "You just want the power of the Pagoda of Nations in me, right?" "Ha ha ha ha!" Lady Meiji laughed heartily, replying, "You now possess the power of both the Dragon Vein and the Pagoda of Nations. These are essential for me." "Don't dream. I won't help you achieve your goal," Kiran said coldly, about to refuse. "You can't refuse. You will help me," Lady Meiji stated with unwavering confidence. Ignoring her, Kiran continued to study how to save Yvonne. "Today, the power of the Pagoda of Nations has submitted to your Dragon Vein power. Not only is your Dragon Vein power stronger, but it has also absorbed other powers, making you a true king," Lady Meiji continued. Kiran understood this, feeling the submission of the white light to the red light just now, and the enhancement of his power. He knew he had become truly powerful. Although Kiran acknowledged Lady Meiji's partial truth, he remained skeptical. "Whether you believe it or not, if you don't act to save Yvonne, she will surely die," Lady Meiji persisted. "Saving her will also preserve my lifeblood. Don't forget, Aoki Cosner is still in my hands. If I die, she will die too. You hold not just Yvonne's fate, but also hers. Make your choice," Lady Meiji declared proudly. Kiran was deeply conflicted. He considered whether to follow through with saving Yvonne. "Since you're already with other women, why hesitate over one more? Why struggle with this?" Lady Meiji continued, sensing Kiran's thoughts. Her words, although lightly spoken, deeply stirred Kiran. Though he had known Yvonne for a long time and knew she genuinely liked him, he had never considered this. As Kiran pondered, Yvonne's body grew stiffer, like a frozen beauty, exuding a cold, sorrowful aura. A wave of heartache swept over Kiran. "Hurry, she won't last much longer," Lady Meiji's voice, now weak, urged. Realizing that Lady Meiji's death would mean Yvonne's too, Kiran made a resolute decision. He began undressing and moved towards Yvonne. Chapter 1073. The two of them both physically and emotionally intertwined. Their true love blended. Their genuine feelings became a reality. Kiran York injected his power into Yvonne Quinn through this special method. Yvonne, who had been frozen and unresponsive, slowly began to relax as she felt the energy. It seemed like she was gradually thawing from her frozen state, starting to show some signs of life. Seeing Yvonne's transformation, Kiran's heart filled with hope. He concentrated all his efforts on waking her up. Despite his persistent efforts, nothing seemed to work. Eventually, he, too, fell asleep. When Kiran woke up, he saw that Yvonne's previously white hair had turned back to black. She lay quietly in his arms, still asleep. Though her eyes were closed, her long eyelashes fluttered as if she were greeting him or speaking to him. Kiran knew that Yvonne was awake and gently held her in his arms. Yvonne's beautiful face now had a touch of allure and happiness. She naturally opened her arms and embraced Kiran. Yvonne had actually woken up earlier, knowing she had become a woman. She felt happiness, excitement, and a bit of shyness, so she pretended to stay asleep. Now, Kiran's embrace made her realize there was no longer need to pretend. "How do you feel now?" Kiran wanted to know the state of Lady Meiji's lifeblood in Yvonne's body. Yvonne, feeling nervous and with her mind in disarray, playfully scolded Kiran. "How can you ask such an embarrassing question?" Kiran was momentarily taken aback, but quickly explained, "You misunderstood. I wasn't asking about that. I meant." "Then, what were you asking about?" Yvonne feigned a fierce expression, glaring at Kiran. Despite her flustered state, she thought to herself, "Why doesn't this stupid pig try to comfort me?" Feeling at a loss for words, Kiran raised his hand to check Yvonne's pulse. As he accidentally touched her body, Yvonne's soft form naturally melded against him, pressing tightly against his body. Kiran felt incredibly tempted but controlled his emotions, focusing on checking Yvonne's pulse. Realizing she had misunderstood again, Yvonne felt even more embarrassed but continued acting coyly. "See if I'm pregnant." Kiran rolled his eyes at her remark, thinking, how could she be pregnant right after we were together? Understanding Kiran's thoughts, Yvonne teased, "Maybe I'm carrying someone else's child." Kiran was speechless. Yvonne giggled like silver bells, breaking free from Kiran's grasp, and wrapped her arms around his neck. Kiran noticed that Yvonne seemed more alluring and charming than ever before. Most importantly, her body was no longer cold, but had returned to a normal temperature. "I feel great now. My body is very comfortable, though some places are a bit sore," Yvonne whispered in Kiran's ear, her face flushed red. Kiran's heart couldn't help but race at her words. He felt an inexplicable allure. Like a playful kitten, Yvonne snuggled against Kiran, acting both coy and affectionate. Kiran felt he was quickly succumbing to the seduction. However, he suddenly remembered Jenny Leo outside and wondered about her recovery. He quickly said to Yvonne, "Jenny exhausted herself to save you. I need to check on her." With that, Kiran began dressing and jumped out of bed. Yvonne didn't stop him, her eyes filled with happiness and sweetness. Kiran rushed out to check on Jenny. As he closed the door, Yvonne's face lit up with a radiant smile. Unfortunately, Kiran missed this smile, which would have surprised him, as it resembled Lady Meiji's smile, beautiful and etched in his memory. When Kiran went outside, he saw Jenny still sleeping on the sofa, breathing evenly and looking better. This relieved him, especially knowing that Jenny often got jealous. Seeing her asleep meant she might not know what happened. Kiran gently placed his hand on Jenny's wrist to check her pulse. Jenny felt his touch and opened her eyes, smiling brightly like a child who had just woken up. "I'm fine now, much better." Kiran gently stroked her forehead. "That's great, I was worried." Jenny smiled happily but asked with concern, "How's Yvonne? Did she wake up?" "I'm fine now," Yvonne said, stepping out. She wore a casual nightgown, loosely tied at the waist, exuding a lazy elegance. She radiated an irresistible mature charm, more so than his pregnant wife, Snow Xander. Puzzled by Yvonne's sudden maturity and allure, Kiran realized there was no point in hiding the truth. He began, Jenny, having been asleep earlier, was curious and confused. Seeing Kiran hesitating, Yvonne laughed and said, "We slept together, Kiran." Jenny's mouth dropped open in shock and anger, but she quickly suppressed it, knowing Yvonne had known Kiran longer. Yvonne, laughing, walked over and hugged Jenny, ignoring Kiran. Kiran stood there, stunned by the scene. Chapter 1074. Despite her confusion, Jenny Leo felt Yvonne Quinn's sincerity and naturally leaned into her embrace. The two women seemed like close friends, or even sisters. To Kiran York, Yvonne exuded an intense feminine charm that seemed to captivate men and earn the trust of women. This charm was a mystery to Kiran. "Should we hurry to Saintess Mountain to rescue Aoki Kozner?" Yvonne suddenly asked Kiran. Kiran refocused his thoughts and nodded to Yvonne. I plan to go to Saintess Mountain today. Jenny was delighted. That's great. Once we rescue Aoki, we can return to Dragonsland. I don't want to stay here any longer. This place isn't so bad. As long as Kiran is here, your happiness is here, Yvonne replied calmly, with a hint of teasing. Jenny shook her head. I still prefer Dragonsland. I feel like everyone here is a bastard. Yvonne laughed at Jenny's remark, finding her innocence endearing. Kiran also saw Jenny as a playful young girl and didn't give it much thought. The three of them quickly packed up and headed to Saintess Mountain. Neither Kiran nor Jenny noticed Yvonne's transformation. They just thought Yvonne had become more womanly, her charm irresistible to both men and women. After his battle at the Pagoda of Nations, Kiran had become a legendary figure in Sunland. Despite the anger and shock from many, no one dared to challenge him after witnessing Kanpei Ichiro's death, which had deeply shaken everyone, including Konta Yasuda, who had gone into hiding. Thus, Kiran's journey to Saintess Mountain was smooth. When they arrived, the towering peaks seemed to pierce the sky, covered in lush greenery and vibrant life. Each of them had different feelings as they looked at the mountain. Kiran felt a vague sense of unease, not only for Aoki's safety, but also because of Lady Meiji's formidable mental attacks. Jenny, still childlike, only wanted to kill the old witch and return to Dragonsland. On the other hand, Yvonne seemed more beautiful and seductive, her face filled with anticipation. She felt a connection to the mountain, as if her heart and soul were merging with it. Hurry up the mountain, Yvonne said, already stepping forward. Kiran found Yvonne's behavior strange but couldn't explain why. He was drawn to her charm, barely able to control his own desires. If not for his strong will, he feared he would fall for her entirely. He took Jenny's hand and followed Yvonne. Jenny watched Yvonne's beautiful figure and whispered to Kiran, "Is my back as beautiful as Yvonne's?" Kiran was puzzled. "Why are you asking? Yvonne's figure is so beautiful that even I, as a woman, am captivated." "I want to hug her from behind," Jenny said, her expression like a fangirl's. Kiran's heart skipped a beat. He, too, found Yvonne's figure extraordinarily beautiful but quickly suppressed the impulse, scolding Jenny, "You think too much." Jenny stuck out her tongue playfully. "If you're mean to me again, I'll go love Yvonne instead." Kiran turned away, not wanting to engage with her antics. To him, Jenny's behavior was more mischievous than annoying. Jenny didn't mind, grabbing Kiran's arm and swinging it. Yvonne's figure is just so mesmerizing. Her constant praise of Yvonne's figure made Kiran's heart race even more. His eyes involuntarily followed Yvonne, admiring her tall, slender form in casual sportswear, her hair tied back, looking fresh and elegant like a hiker. Despite the mountain's dangers, Yvonne's presence made him feel peaceful. He wondered why Yvonne had changed so drastically since yesterday. The transition from girl to woman he had seen before, but Yvonne's transformation was different, almost bizarre. Kiran recalled Lady Meiji's warnings about staying with Yvonne. Could it be because of her influence that Yvonne seemed so extraordinary now? These thoughts made Kiran anxious and uneasy. Yvonne seemed to sense his turmoil, turning to smile at him with enchanting grace. Her smile dispelled his doubts, replacing them with calmness. Yet deep down, Kiran felt something was off but couldn't pinpoint it. Jenny, acting like a devoted fan, never took her eyes off Yvonne. The trio climbed the mountain without finding Aoki. Kiran frowned slightly. "There's a house here," Yvonne suddenly said. Chapter 10, 75. Kiran York and Jenny Leo quickly looked in the direction Yvonne Quinn was pointing and saw a wooden house built in the typical Sunland style. The house wasn't large, but it was exquisitely decorated, surrounded by natural wooden fences covered in blooming flowers. If this little house were at the foot of the mountain or in the city, it would certainly be considered a high-end villa. However, situated at the top of Saintess Mountain, it seemed somewhat out of place and incongruous with its surroundings. "It's so beautiful. If I could find a place like this to retire, my life would be perfect," Jenny said to herself, stepping toward the house. Kiran quickly grabbed her hand, whispering, "Be careful, we're on Saintess Mountain." Jenny stopped and looked more cautious. "So what if we're on Saintess Mountain? Why are you so nervous?" On the other hand, Yvonne remained calm and composed as she walked toward the house. Kiran, worried about Yvonne, hurriedly grabbed her hand to stop her from going in recklessly. However, as soon as he touched her hand, he felt a strong force pulling him. Kiran was stunned and quickly tried to pull his hand away, but Yvonne turned to look at him. Her face was filled with a sweet and happy smile that made Kiran feel at ease and comforted. Kiran's tension and unease quickly dissipated as he gazed at Yvonne. "I just think the house is pretty." "Let's go take a look," she said, pulling Kiran along. Only Yvonne's eyes had a smile and a complicated look, as if she was looking forward to it. At this moment, she felt like she had returned to her long-lost home. "Yvonne Quinn, let go of my hand." Kiran York exerted force several times, wanting to break free from her hand, but he couldn't. Yvonne giggled and looked at Kiran York. "I'm a woman. You're holding my hand too. I'm not afraid of being at a disadvantage." "What are you afraid of?" Kiran York felt a little helpless when he heard her teasing. In the end, Kiran York let go of Jenny's hand. He had to be prepared to counterattack and attack at any time. "What if Jenny is in danger if you don't protect her?" Yvonne reminded. When Jenny heard Yvonne's reminder, she instinctively hugged Kiran's arm. Kiran York felt even more uneasy. Concerned about Jenny, he reluctantly led her along as well. When they reached the gate, it opened automatically, as if welcoming them. Kiran focused his attention, suspecting that this house was related to Lady Meiji. Jenny, however, shouted excitedly, "Old witch, we're here! Bring Aoki Kosner out!" Her voice echoed across the mountains, scaring the birds away. Yet the house remained eerily quiet, which made Kiran even more uneasy. He took a deep breath to calm himself as Yvonne continued to lead him inside. The interior of the house was spotless and orderly, as if someone lived there. However, there was no sign of anyone's presence. Kiran called out, "Lady Meiji, I'm here. Where is Aoki Kosner?" His voice echoed in the house, but there was no response. "We've come all this way. I'm tired. Sit down," Yvonne said, pulling Kiran to a seat. Jenny also sat down naturally. Kiran remained vigilant, pondering their location. He had heard that Aoki was supposedly born out of Lady Meiji's hatred at the foot of Saintess Mountain, but he saw no signs of life there. This confused him even more. Not seeing Lady Meiji made Kiran increasingly nervous. He was wary of this demonic woman and afraid of what might happen. He wouldn't worry as much if he were alone, but with two women and Aoki in danger, he feared any mistake could be fatal. Sitting on the tatami, Jenny swayed slightly and said, "This is so comfortable, I feel like taking a nap." Kiran was taken aback and was about to speak when Jenny yawned and fell asleep. This made Kiran feel helpless. Jenny was sometimes mischievous, but not usually like this. As he was about to wake her, Yvonne pulled his hand and smiled. "Let her sleep if she wants to. I'm here, aren't I?" Her voice was calm, but her expression made Kiran even more uneasy. "Why are you looking at me like that? Didn't you spend the night with me yesterday? What's there to worry about?" Yvonne's mention of last night made Kiran's head spin as he suddenly realized, "Lady Meiji, have you taken control of Yvonne?" Kiran's voice turned cold as he questioned Yvonne. She smiled brightly and blinked her beautiful eyes. "So, am I Yvonne Quinn or Lady Meiji?" she asked. Kiran's head buzzed. He feared becoming as confused as Daniel Yarrow, who had been bewitched his entire life. Chapter 1076. Yvonne Quinn's smile grew even more radiant as she laughed and said to Kiran York, "Why are you so tense? It's not like I'm going to kill you." "Lady Meiji, don't think you can use or control me. I will kill you," Kiran replied coldly, staring at Yvonne. Yvonne giggled and said in a delicate, aggrieved tone, "I'm your woman. We were together last night, and now you want to kill me? Are you crazy?" Kiran's feelings were complex as he looked at the charming and flirtatious Yvonne. He suspected Lady Meiji had taken control of Yvonne, but even if that were true, it was still Yvonne standing before him. Should he act against her? Should he kill her? These thoughts raced through his mind. Yvonne stepped closer to Kiran, seemingly unaware of his doubts. "They say there are always higher mountains and more splendid buildings. Look around, it's just us on Saintess Mountain. The scenery is beautiful and peaceful. Why don't we celebrate and add some wonderful sounds to this place?" Her voice was as melodious as a song, deeply resonating with Kiran's heart, shaking him profoundly. It also stirred an inexplicable fear within him. Despite Yvonne's boldness and the fiery passion typical of Maui women, she was acting in a way he couldn't understand. Kiran tried to maintain control over his emotions. "Lady Meiji, stop with these tactics. Just tell me what you want," he demanded. "I'm Yvonne Quinn. Do I need to repeat that? Don't you remember our wonderful time together last night?" Yvonne insisted, her beautiful eyes filled with gentle reproach and endless tenderness. Her expression and allure seemed capable of warming hearts and filling Kiran with love. Though Kiran felt a strong impulse to act, he held back. Yvonne's sweet smile grew even brighter as she lightly touched his face, her fingernails brushing against his stubble, producing a soft, seductive sound. Kiran felt his anger and killing intent subside as he sensed the warmth of her hand. If you insist on treating me as Lady Meiji, let's play that role. Tell me, what would you do? Yvonne said, stepping outside. Watching her beautiful figure, Kiran thought of how captivated Jenny Leo had been by Yvonne's back. He looked at Jenny, sleeping peacefully on the tatami like a lazy kitten. Convinced that Lady Meiji had taken control of Yvonne, Kiran felt a surge of disgust, anger, and frustration. All right, I'll stop teasing you. I really am Yvonne Quinn, and I have nothing to do with Lady Meiji, Yvonne said playfully. Kiran didn't believe her, watching her closely. Kiran, I didn't expect you to be so cautious. It's quite surprising, came a sudden voice. Macy Wendell appeared in sight. Seeing Macy Wendell here surprised Kiran. He recalled everything that had happened in Dragon City and realized that this was Sophia Carter's mother, who had been missing for a long time. Kiran studied both Yvonne and Macy, sensing a similar aura between them but unable to fully understand it. Why are you looking at me like that? You've already taken my daughter's lifeblood. Are you now interested in this old woman? Macy said calmly, sitting on a nearby wooden stool as if she owned the place. Does your immortal silkworm goo allow Lady Meiji to resurrect repeatedly? Kiran asked, watching Macy. The immortal silkworm goo has its uses, and Lady Meiji needs it. That's why I have it in me and why we've crossed paths, Macy said, looking into the distance as if talking about everyday matters. Kiran's expression grew more serious. He wasn't sure if she was telling the truth, but a thought about Sue Walton crossed his mind. He hadn't contacted her in a while, and it seemed she had vanished from his memory. Seeing Macy mention Maui made him think of Sue, who was also skilled in poisons and might be more powerful than Yvonne. Sue had come to Sunland ahead of him to help investigate Lady Meiji. Why hadn't he heard from her? These thoughts made Kiran more worried and suspicious. He didn't trust Macy, unsure if she and Lady Meiji were working together. Seeing his changing expression, Macy smiled and asked, "What are you worried about? Haven't you noticed I don't want to kill you?" Although Kiran didn't sense any killing intent from Macy, his eyes remained sharp. "I only came here to find Aoki Cosner and take her away." "Oh, so, you no longer want to kill Lady Meiji?" Macy asked, smiling. Kiran had deliberately avoided mentioning his intention to kill Lady Meiji, hoping to find Aoki first, but now, Macy had seen through his plan. As Kiran struggled to respond, Sue Walton's voice suddenly echoed in his mind. Chapter 1077. You still remember me, huh? I guess you have some conscience left. Sue Walton's voice remained sweet and filled with the allure of a mature woman. Hearing Sue's voice, Kiran York felt a sudden calmness and clarity. Although he didn't speak, he wondered what was happening before him. Illusion, Sue's voice echoed as if she could read Kiran's thoughts. Kiran was taken aback. He scrutinized everything around him, trying to grasp what she meant by illusion. Nothing is completely real or fake. Everything you see could be both true and false, making it impossible to understand the situation, Sue continued. Kiran stayed silent but wondered where Lady Meiji was. Lady Meiji can take on any form she desires. So, whether it's the Yvonne you suspect, the real Jenny Leo, or even Macy Wendell standing before you, they could all be Lady Meiji, Sue's voice explained. Kiran was stunned, unsure how to respond. How was he supposed to deal with her if Lady Meiji could do this? You should view defeating Lady Meiji as an exercise in cultivating mental strength. Only by enhancing your mental power can you truly overcome her, Sue's voice suggested. Kiran's eyes sharpened as he fell into deep thought. The best thing you can do now is stay here and train. This training is essentially a mental battle with Lady Meiji. If you break through, she fails. If you don't, she succeeds, Sue advised again. Kiran didn't speak, but his expression turned serious and determined. Hang in there. Train your mental strength here, and I can help you absorb Lady Meiji's mental power. Then you will truly become someone who can control mental energy, Sue encouraged earnestly. Kiran had other doubts and suspicions, but thinking of Sue's sincerity and proactive efforts to explore this place, he trusted she wouldn't deceive him. He turned to Yvonne, who had been silent for a while, and smiled. Since you say the scenery here is nice, I'll stay for a while to relax. How about that? Yvonne and Macy were both surprised by Kiran's sudden decision, their faces showing shock. Yvonne quickly walked over and hugged Kiran. That's wonderful. I've always wanted some alone time with you. Maybe I can get pregnant with your child. Her voice was sweet and seductive. If this had been earlier, Kiran might have been tempted. However, thanks to Sue's reminder, he remained calm and embraced her without any desire. Although he didn't know exactly how to cultivate mental strength, he realized that controlling his desires and inner demons was the first step. Kiran's reaction surprised Yvonne and Meiji, especially Meiji, whose face showed disbelief. "Why don't you come with me for a walk? I think the view over there is nice," Yvonne suggested sweetly. Kiran didn't object and held Yvonne as they walked toward the east side of the mountain, where a sea of flowers bloomed. Meiji watched their backs, her gaze narrowing before she smiled calmly, convinced that Kiran wouldn't escape being conquered by the allure of the beautiful scenery and moment. Yvonne clung to Kiran, her soft body constantly rubbing against him, trying to ignite his desires. However, thanks to Sue's advice, Kiran remained calm and showed no reaction. Yvonne tried to seduce him several times, even kissing him, but Kiran stayed unaffected. "Are you no longer interested in me?" Yvonne asked, feigning a delicate grievance. Kiran smiled and shook his head. "I'm just too tired from yesterday, so I don't feel anything now." Yvonne glared at him. "I didn't complain about being tired, and now you're the one complaining." "It's infuriating." Kiran wasn't bothered by her complaints and simply smiled. "Kiss me," Yvonne requested, raising her pretty face and gazing at him with tender eyes. Her expression was full of allure, and her eyes were brimming with affection. Anyone else might have been captivated instantly, but Kiran remained calm, giving her a light kiss on the lips. Despite Yvonne's attempts to draw him closer, Kiran showed no desire. They walked through the flower fields for a long time, with Yvonne trying various ways to tempt him, but he remained unmoved. Eventually, Yvonne gave up, and they enjoyed the beautiful scenery. Yvonne seemed genuinely immersed in the beauty, while Kiran focused on the deeper meaning of the landscape, experiencing a newfound calm. He realized that maintaining his composure in the face of Yvonne's temptations was crucial to his training. This filled him with excitement. Meanwhile, a white-clad woman appeared next to Macy Wendell. It was Lady Meiji. Chapter 1078. It seems that Kiran York is truly smart. He managed to calm down and observe, Lady Meiji said, looking at Macy Wendell. "If he continues to stay calm, you won't be able to obtain the power of the dragon vein or the power of the Pagoda of Nations," Macy said calmly. "Then you need to help me get it. I need that power now. If you help me, I'll return the demon suppression stone to your Maui tribe," Lady Meiji promised, looking at Macy. Macy's expression changed several times before finally saying, "It's not that I'm unwilling to help you. I'm actually trying to mislead Kiran, but haven't you noticed how calm he is?" Lady Meiji's eyes showed a complex expression which turned into a smile. Even experts like Daniel Yarrow couldn't resist temptation, yet Kiran can. "It's because Kiran, having gone through some experiences, probably only loves Snow Xander. A person with true love in their heart won't easily give in to their desires," Macy analyzed. Lady Meiji's face turned cold and determined. "No matter what, I must obtain the power of the dragon vein and the Pagoda of Nations." Macy remained silent, but her expression grew serious as if she was under great pressure. "Even though the Pagoda of Nations has collapsed, you still can't get the demon suppression stone without me," Lady Meiji reminded Macy with a cold smile. Macy stayed silent, but inside she felt immense pressure. As a witch of the Maui tribe, she knew her mission was to retrieve the demon suppression stone, the spiritual symbol of her people. Lady Meiji stopped paying attention to Macy and disappeared. Buried in his mental training, Kiran hadn't noticed Lady Meiji's presence or heard the conversation. Yvonne Quinn, however, seemed happy and carefree, immersed in her own joy. After a long time, Yvonne grew tired and walked over to Kiran, jumping into his arms like a spoiled child. Kiran didn't reject her but held her gently, allowing her to enjoy the moment. Yvonne quickly fell asleep, and Kiran carried her back to the small house on the mountain. Inside, Jenny Leo was still asleep on the tatami, her face showing a blissful smile as if she were dreaming. Kiran didn't want to disturb Jenny's sleep, so he laid Yvonne down on the bed. The two women lay side by side, sleeping peacefully, while he stood guard nearby. Kiran felt a sense of tranquility and love, entering a deeply peaceful state. He sensed a surge of power in his heart, blending with the dragon vein's power and the power of the Pagoda of Nations. Filled with joy and anticipation, Kiran tried to strengthen this power. However, it didn't grow as he expected, remaining a gentle, flowing stream. Kiran knew he couldn't rush the process. Mental cultivation was a gradual journey. He opened his eyes and stepped outside. He saw Macy Wendell sitting alone, silently. Even though she noticed Kiran, she remained silent, just sitting there. Kiran approached Macy, wanting to speak to her. Macy didn't say anything, instead pointing to a stone opposite her, indicating for Kiran to sit down. Kiran didn't understand her intention but complied, sitting down. He watched Meiji, curious about her silence. He soon realized that her mature, graceful face showed no expression, as if she hadn't noticed him. Intrigued, Kiran closed his eyes. As soon as he did, he felt a flow of blood coursing through his veins, pounding against his heart. He then sensed Meisi's voice in his mind. "I can communicate with you through Sophia Carter's life essence." Kiran was startled, his expression changing slightly. "If you want to defeat Lady Meiji, you need strong mental power. I'll help you cultivate it," Meiji said. Kiran was surprised by her offer. "I'm the previous generation's witch of the Maui tribe. I left Maui to find the demon suppression stone. To hide my identity, I married into the Carter family. Everything I told you before was partly true and partly a lie. Now I'm telling you the truth," Meiji explained. Kiran was shocked to learn that Meiji was the true witch of the Maui tribe. "You can learn about my past, but it doesn't matter. Some things are true, some are acts, and some are unavoidable. I know you're training your mental power under Sue Walton's guidance, but your method is too superficial. I'll teach you a more systematic approach." "You don't have to believe me or follow my training," Meiji added, fearing Kiran's distrust. Kiran was indeed shocked, but he quickly composed himself, replying through their mental link, "Don't worry. I have my own judgment. I'll know if you're sincere." "Axel Yanes chose well. You truly are capable," Meiji remarked with a hint of admiration. Kiran was slightly puzzled, wondering about Meisi's connection to Axel. "I loved Axel my whole life, but it never worked out. He died, and through the immortal silkworm goo, I ended up marrying into the Carter family and had 2 children," Meiji said, her tone a mix of humor and regret. Kiran was deeply shocked by Meisi's revelations, realizing that the secrets she held far exceeded his imagination. Her age alone challenged his perception and worldview. Chapter 1079. Focus on your training and don't let your mind wander. You don't need to worry about those things, Meiji Wendell reminded Kiran York. Kiran quickly refocused his thoughts and began his training as Meiji advised. As he concentrated, the faint energy he had sensed earlier grew stronger under Meisi's guidance, eventually becoming a mighty torrent within him. Kiran was astonished by this transformation, wondering how Meiji possessed such an ability. He glanced at her several times, trying to understand her methods, but couldn't figure it out. He simply followed the flow of energy within his body. As this energy coursed through him, it seemed to unblock numerous pathways, enhancing his strength and aura. Time passed unnoticed as they trained together. When Kiran opened his eyes, he felt more alert, able to hear the distant sounds of insects and rustling grass on Saintess Mountain with newfound clarity. Although his martial training had sharpened his senses before, this heightened mental focus was unprecedented, filling him with excitement and joy. "Continue your training here. Try to concentrate the power of the dragon vein and the Pagoda of Nations with your mental strength," Meiji instructed calmly. Kiran nodded, gratitude evident on his face. "Thank you." Meiji shook her head and smiled. "Axel Yanes is dead. An imperial dragon in Dragon's Land is now a shadow of its former self. I hope you can carry on Axel's legacy, uphold the spirit of Imperial Dragon, and strive to make Dragon's Land strong." Kiran was deeply moved by her words, which were filled with emotion and sincerity. Seeing a mountain is not a mountain, seeing water is not water. Things are not always as they seem. Everything depends on chance, Meiji said, standing up slowly. Kiran watched her with a thoughtful expression. "Sue Walton is probably searching for the demon suppression stone right now. If she finds it, tell her to return it to the Maui tribe. She can become the next witch," Meiji said. Kiran was taken aback and asked, "Is the demon suppression stone important?" Meiji didn't explain, only smiled faintly as she gazed at Saintess Mountain. Kiran immediately understood, thinking of Lady Meiji and her ominous presence. Suddenly, a woman's angry voice interrupted them. Kiran and Meiji turned to see Lady Meiji approaching. This was Kiran's first time seeing her in person. Before, it had always been through dreams or voices. She wore white, her skin pale and graceful, like a celestial being descended from the heavens. Her eyes were filled with anger as she glared at Meiji. Meiji remained calm and smiled at Lady Meiji. "I am from Dragon's Land. To me, Dragon's Land is above all else." It's not Dragon's Land, but Axel Yanes, who means everything to you. That's why you're willing to do all this for him, even for Kiran," Lady Meiji retorted coldly. Meiji didn't argue, smiling serenely. "Whatever the reason, Kiran's mental strength training has started. It will be difficult for you to control him now." "Meiji Wendell, I didn't expect you to sabotage my plans," Since that's the case, I'll make sure the demon suppression stone never returns to the Maui tribe, Lady Meiji said icily. It's no longer up to you. With Kiran's help, the demon suppression stone will return to Maui, Meiji said, looking at Kiran with encouragement and hope. Kiran now understood the enmity between Lady Meiji and Meiji. He had let go of his previous doubts about Meiji. As a Dragonsland native, he felt it was his duty to return the demon suppression stone. Kiran stepped in front of Meiji to protect her, saying, Lady Meiji, you finally show yourself. It's time we settled this. Lady Meiji sneered. Don't think that you can defeat me just because you've started training your mental strength. It's laughable. She stared at Kiran, her eyes transforming into a sea of waves that seemed ready to engulf him. Kiran felt a momentary shock but quickly steadied himself, meeting her gaze. Bang! A loud bang echoed in the air as the surrounding plants bent and broke in a fierce wind, sending flowers flying. Kiran and Lady Meiji stood firm, both on high alert. Lady Meiji's eyes flashed with anger as she glared at Meiji. Meiji's guidance had clearly strengthened Kiran, disrupting Lady Meiji's plans. Meiji, pleased, stood behind Kiran and softly said, You have great talent, even more so than Axel Yanes. Kiran felt a mixture of pride and confusion as he turned to look at Meiji just as she sighed. If Axel Yanes hadn't doubted me, fearing that training with me would make him fall in love with me, and instead had focused on mental strength, he wouldn't have died in Sunland, and the Dragon Soul Sword wouldn't be there, Meiji said with regret. Kiran was stunned and turned to look at her. Meiji's eyes were filled with sorrow and loss as she faced Lady Meiji. If Axel had mental control like Kiran, you couldn't have interfered, and he wouldn't have died in Sunland. Lady Meiji burst into laughter at Meiji's words. Chapter 1080. Back then, Axel Yanes didn't have to die, he chose to. Who can be blamed for that? Lady Meiji's words suggested that she didn't want Axel Yanes to die, yet he did. Kiran York was slightly puzzled and turned to look at Meiji Wendell. Meiji ignored Kiran's questioning gaze and instead looked at Lady Meiji, saying, The reason I cooperated with you all these years was to figure out how to control your mental power. Dragonsland lost Axel Yanes. It can't afford to lose another person. Meiji glanced at Kiran, her eyes filled with concern and care. Lady Meiji was furious upon hearing Meiji's words and let out a cold laugh. If I'm not mistaken, back then you wanted to use mental power to control Axel Yanes, making him your lover forever at your feet, Meiji said, matching Lady Meiji's cold smile. Lady Meiji's expression faltered but quickly returned to calmness. You're not entirely foolish, that's precisely it. Lady Meiji seemed lost in thought for a moment before looking up at the sky and saying, Living like this, I often feel lonely, so I longed for someone to accompany me. When I first arrived at Jade Dragon Mountain, I hoped that the power of the dragon vein could revive me so I could become a normal person again, experiencing love and life, even if my life would be limited then. I didn't expect the dragon vein's power to be so overwhelming. Just a little contact almost turned my body to ashes. Kiran furrowed his brows and asked coldly, So you hid in Cassie Nash's body and absorbed the dragon vein's power through her? I did have that idea, but I found it impossible, so I tried to absorb it from Axel Yanes, but he refused, Lady Meiji explained after a brief pause. I then hid in Cassie Nash's body using Daniel Yarrow to absorb the dragon vein's power. But Axel Yanes discovered it, and to protect Daniel, I lured Axel to Sunland and orchestrated his death there, Lady Meiji continued. Hearing this, Meiji's face showed immense pain and regret. Deep down, she still loved Axel Yanes, despite having the immortal silkworm goo, which granted her a youthful appearance and long life. Axel's death felt as fresh as if it had just happened. Why did Cassie Nash die later? Kiran was particularly interested in Cassie because her daughter was Cassandra Yarrow, and her granddaughter was Yvonne Quinn, who now seemed very mysterious. Back then, Axel Yanes was very powerful in Sunland. Ultimately, I had to use mental interference to weaken him. Although I killed him, I also greatly depleted my mental strength and was on the brink of death. I had no choice but to absorb Cassie Nash's strength to survive, Lady Meiji explained. So you absorbed her strength to survive, and she died, right? Kiran asked. Lady Meiji's expression darkened. You could say that. After she died, I existed in this state and lost contact with Daniel Yarrow. Lady Meiji looked at Saintess Mountain and continued, I had to rely on the meager power of this mountain and the incense offerings from the Pagoda of Nations to sustain my basic cultivation. Kiran's expression changed several times as he looked at Lady Meiji. I think you're too greedy. If you're dead, why not enter reincarnation? I don't need to explain myself to you. But you should understand that in his final moments, Axel Yanes infused his soul into the Dragon Soul Sword. He wanted to make it more powerful and to live forever, Lady Meiji said with some emotion, pointing to Macy. I'm actually envious of her. If I had a real body, I'd also raise an immortal silkworm goo and live forever through endless cycles, Lady Meiji added. Macy couldn't help but laugh at herself. Sometimes living forever is a curse. I never imagined living with an ordinary person, yet I did and had 2 children. Kiran thought of Sophia Carter and Joshua Carter. Given Macy's current state, she probably never intended to have children or live with ordinary people. Lady Meiji seemed to share this sentiment. What Macy regrets most is what I fear the most. Kiran was curious and looked at Lady Meiji. I live in this state, not quite human but almost divine, with people worshipping me. But if I became human, I might end up like Macy, living a mundane life, having children, Lady Meiji said with a complex expression. Kiran furrowed his brows slightly. I'd rather exist as I am, worshipped as a deity, than live as a human, controlled and ordered around, Lady Meiji said with a rare smile as if she had let go of many things. Greed often leaves people with nothing, Macy said, looking at Lady Meiji. You want the Dragon Vein's power and the Pagoda of Nations' power to revive yourself and my immortal silkworm goo to live forever. Isn't that too greedy? Greed is human nature. Without it, the world would be peaceful. It's this greed that drives progress and keeps people moving forward, Lady Meiji said calmly. Kiran now saw Lady Meiji's true nature. To stay alive, she had abandoned all humanity. Looking at Macy, he suddenly felt she wasn't as despicable as he had once thought. On the contrary, he respected her. She was a woman with responsibilities. Helping him was actually helping to fulfill Axel Yanes' last wishes. Living well was to take care of her children. As for killing her husband, it was because, as a proud woman, her dignity had been shattered. Seeing Kiran's attention on Macy, Lady Meiji couldn't help but laugh coldly. I'm actually more arrogant than Macy Wendell.